My daughter-in-law made a simple mistake today. She handed me the wrong lunchbox. It seemed like a harmless mix-up, something to laugh about over dinner. But when my coworker, a hardened ex-combat medic, looked inside that box, he didn't laugh. He went pale. He looked me dead in the eye, his hands trembling, and said, "Ben, get your son to the emergency room, right now." "Why?" I asked, confused. He crushed a pill from the box between his fingers. "Because if he takes what's in this box, he'll be dead by the weekend." That moment didn't just scare me. It destroyed everything I thought I knew about my family. My name is Ben Carter. I am 70 years old. I should be retired fishing by a lake. Instead, I'm standing in a dusty construction site in Chicago, hauling drywall alongside men half my age. My back screams, my knees pop, but I have no choice. 6 months ago, my wife Carolyn passed away. Before the grass grew on her grave, my son Matthew came to me begging for help. He was drowning in debt, trying to buy a dream house he couldn't afford. Matt has a severe heart condition. Stress kills him, literally. Seeing him panic, clutching his chest, I did what any father would do. I sold my own house, my paid-off forever home, and gave him $200,000 for a down payment. I moved into a cramped, leaky apartment. I went back to work. I sacrificed my golden years so he could be safe. And Rachel, his wife, seemed grateful. She played the perfect daughter-in-law. Every morning at 6:30, she hands me a packed lunch and a hot coffee before I head to the site. "You need your strength, Dad," she always says with a sweet smile. Today, that routine turned into a nightmare. At noon, exhausted and aching, I sat down on a stack of plywood to eat. I opened the blue lunchbox she gave me. It wasn't mine. It was Matt's. Inside, next to a sandwich, was his weekly pill organizer. I sighed. Matt needed those pills at noon sharp. Nitroglycerin and beta blockers. Without them, his heart fails. I picked up the container. It was Wednesday. The compartment held 3 pills, 2 blue, 1 white. "Enjoying the 5-star dining, Ben?" I looked up. It was Miguel, the electrician. He sat down next to me. "Just a mix-up," I said, showing him the box. "Rachel gave me Matt's meds. I gotta run them over to him." Miguel froze. He stared at the white pill. He didn't blink. "Let me see that." He took the pill. He sniffed it. Then he pulled out a pocket knife and scraped the edge. The pill didn't snap. It crumbled into fine white dust. Miguel tasted the powder on his finger and spat it out. "Ben," he said, his voice dangerously low. "What is your son taking?" "Nitroglycerin," I said. "Extended release." Miguel looked at me with genuine fear. "I was a pharmacist in the army for 10 years. Real nitroglycerin is hard. It has a coating. This—" he rubbed the dust between his fingers. "This is compressed flour and sugar. It's a placebo. A fake." I laughed nervously. "You're crazy. Rachel picks these up from the pharmacy herself." "Then she's picking up lies," Miguel snapped. He grabbed my shoulder. "Look at the texture. Someone pressed this in a mold. Ben, listen to me. If your son has heart failure and he thinks he's medicated, but he's eating flour, his heart isn't getting help. It's shutting down." My stomach dropped. I looked at the organizer. Monday and Tuesday were empty. He had been taking these for 2 days. "If he's been off his meds for 48 hours, Miguel whispered, "he is a walking time bomb. Call him now, before he drops dead." I stared at the white powder on the concrete floor. It looked innocent. But as the realization hit me, it looked like the weapon of a murder in progress. My son wasn't just sick. He was being erased. My hands were trembling so violently that I almost dropped the phone into the concrete dust. Miguel's words were echoing in my skull like a jackhammer. Dead by the weekend, I looked at the pill organizer in my hand. Wednesday full of flour, Monday and Tuesday empty. My son had been swallowing poison for 48 hours. I dialed Matt first. I needed to hear his voice. I needed to know he was still breathing. The phone rang. and rang, and rang. Each ring felt like a countdown. "Pick up, son, please, just pick up." Then the voicemail clicked on. "Hi, you've reached Matt. Leave a message." His voice sounded so happy, recorded back when life was normal. I couldn't speak. I couldn't leave a message saying, "Hey son, stop taking your meds, they're fake." I hung up my breath, coming in short, shallow gasps. "Call her," Miguel said, his voice grim. "Call the wife." Right, Rachel. She was the one who packed the lunch. She was the one who picked up the prescriptions. I dialed her number. The phone felt slippery in my sweating palm. She answered on the second ring. "Hi, Dad," she chirped. Her voice was bright, sunny, completely at odds with the terror freezing my blood. "Did you enjoy the sandwich I used that honey mustard you like?" "Rachel," I choked out. My voice sounded wrecked, like I'd swallowed gravel. "You sent me Matt's lunchbox." There was a split second of silence on the line. A sharp intake of breath. Then chaos. "Oh my God, Dad!" she shrieked. Her voice shot up an octave, frantic and terrified. "I am so sorry. I am such an idiot. I realized it the moment I pulled out of the driveway. I was rushing to get Lily to school. I must have swapped them, and I'm on my way to his office right now with his actual lunch. I am so sorry." She sounded perfect. She sounded exactly like a frazzled mother making an honest mistake. For a heartbeat, I doubted myself. Could Miguel be wrong? But then I looked down at the white powder staining Miguel's calloused thumb. "Rachel, listen to me," I said, trying to channel the authority of the foreman I used to be. "Miguel is here. He used to be a medic. He looked at Matt's pills." I paused. I needed to hear her breathe. I needed to hear the truth in the silence. "He says they are fake, Rachel," I said, my voice low. "He says they are just compressed flour." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. I could hear the faint hum of traffic on her end. I waited for the denial. I waited for her to scream that Miguel was crazy. I waited for the panic of a wife realizing her husband was in danger. Instead, she laughed. It wasn't a villain's cackle. It was a breathy, relieved chuckle. The sound of someone who just narrowly avoided a car accident. "Oh, Dad," she sighed, her voice smoothing out instantly like silk. "You scared me half to death. Is that all?" "Oh, thank God." "Is that all?" I repeated, stunned. "Rachel, there is no medicine in these pills." "I know, Dad," she said, her tone shifting to something confidential, almost conspiratorial. "I completely forgot to tell you. It is the new protocol. I have been so scatterbrained lately." "What protocol?" I asked, looking at Miguel. He was shaking his head, his eyes dark. "Dr. Schneider," she said. "He is the new specialist we are seeing. He is from New York, top of his field. He believes Matt's body has built up a tolerance to the nitroglycerin. It is not working like it should." She spoke fast, confident, using medical buzzwords that sounded expensive. "He wants to do a full system detox," she explained. "He wants to flush Matt's system before starting him on a new experimental drug from Switzerland. It is called cardioprenol. It costs $2,000 a month, but it could save his life." "But flour," I stammered. "Why flour?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Because of Matt, Dad. You know how anxious he is. If we told him he was going off his meds for 5 days, he would panic. His blood pressure would spike, and the stress alone could kill him. So Dr. Schneider prescribed a blind cycle. We give him placebos. We trick his mind into staying calm while his body detoxes. It is brilliant, really." I stood there, a 70-year-old construction worker covered in dust, listening to this sophisticated explanation. Detox, blind cycle, Swiss medicine. It made sense in a twisted way. I wanted it to make sense. "You cannot tell him, Dad," Rachel pleaded, her voice dripping with concern. "If he knows the placebo effect stops, the anxiety comes back. You have to promise me. Secrecy is part of the prescription." She sounded so protective, so loving. I felt a wave of shame. I had accused this woman of murder in my head. "Okay," I said, feeling foolish. "I promise I won't say a word." "Good," she said. "Just throw those away. I will handle everything." I hung up. I looked at Miguel. "It is a detox," I said, trying to convince myself. "New doctor, placebo effect." Miguel stared at the crumbled pill on the floor. He looked at me with pity and anger. "A detox for heart failure," Miguel spat. "Taking a man off heart meds cold turkey, Ben, that does not sound like medicine. That sounds like gambling with a loaded gun." I went back to work hauling drywall, trying to drown out my thoughts with physical labor. But the seed of doubt had been planted deep. Why hadn't Matt mentioned a new doctor? We talked every Sunday. And why did Rachel sound so relieved, not confused, not angry, but relieved that I knew about the fake pills? As the sun went down, the cold knot in my stomach tightened. I knew I couldn't just let this go. I had to know if Dr. Schneider was real. I waited 3 days. 3 agonizing days of staring at the cracked ceiling of my $800 apartment, listening to the dripping faucet and the sirens wailing outside. My gut was twisting into knots tighter than any steel cable I had ever rigged. I wanted to believe Rachel. I desperately wanted to believe that the $200,000 I sacrificed, the home I sold, and the retirement I gave up had bought my son a good life with a woman who loved him. But Miguel's voice kept playing in my head like a broken record. Gambling with a loaded gun. On Saturday morning, I could not take it anymore. I got into my rusted 2005 Ford pickup truck and drove north. I left the potholed streets of the south side and headed toward the suburbs. As I drove, the scenery changed. The liquor stores and pawn shops disappeared, replaced by manicured lawns and gated communities. I pulled up to the house I had paid for. It sat there like a monument to my sacrifice. $1.2 million of brick and stone. A 3-car garage. A sprawling oak tree in the front yard that probably cost more to maintain than I spent on food in a month. It was beautiful. It was perfect. And inside I feared my son was rotting away. I rang the doorbell. I did not have a key. Guests do not have keys, and that is what I was now. A guest in the house I bought. Rachel answered the door. She was wearing yoga pants and a cashmere sweater, looking fresh and rested. But when she saw me, her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. It was a micro-expression, a flash of annoyance before the mask of the dutiful daughter-in-law slid back into place. "Dad," she said, opening the door wider. "What a surprise. We were not expecting you." "I just wanted to check on Matt," I said, stepping into the foyer. The floors were polished marble. The air smelled of expensive vanilla candles. It was quiet. Too quiet. "I have not heard from him since Wednesday." "He is resting," Rachel said quickly, stepping in front of the stairs as if to block my path. "The detox is really intense today. Dr. Schneider said the 3rd and 4th days are the hardest. His body is purging all the chemicals. He needs absolute quiet." I looked at her. I looked at the woman standing on the marble floor I paid for. "I am his father. Rachel," I said, my voice low and hard. "I am not going to wake him up if he is sleeping. But I am going to see him." I walked past her. I did not wait for permission. I climbed the wide carpeted stairs, my work boots heavy on the plush fabric. I felt out of place here, a rough old man in a palace, but I did not care. I reached the master bedroom door. It was closed. I turned the handle and pushed it open. The smell hit me first. It was not vanilla. It was the smell of a sick room. Stale sweat, sour breath, underlying panic. The heavy curtains were drawn, blocking out the Saturday sun. It took a moment for my eyes to adjust to the gloom. When they did, I saw him. Matt was lying in the center of the king-sized bed. He looked small. My son, who used to play linebacker in high school, who used to lift weights with me in the garage, looked like a skeleton wrapped in skin. His face was the color of wet clay. His lips had a bluish tint to them, but it was his breathing that terrified me. It was wet, rattling. Every inhale sounded like he was breathing through a straw. "Matt," I whispered. He opened his eyes. They were glassy, unfocused. It took him a moment to recognize me. "Dad," he wheezed. I walked over to the bed. I sat down on the edge, careful not to disturb him. I took his hand. It was cold and clammy, like touching a fish. I looked at his ankles sticking out from under the duvet. They were swollen, huge, puffy with fluid. I have seen that before. On the job site when guys get crushed. But I also knew what it meant medically. Edema. His heart was not pumping hard enough to circulate his blood. The fluid was pooling in his extremities. He was drowning in his own body. "How are you doing, son?" I asked, trying to keep the tremble out of my voice. "Tired, Dad," he rasped. "So tired. Chest feels heavy, like there is a cinder block sitting on it." Rachel bustled into the room behind me. She was carrying a glass of water with a slice of lemon in it. "Oh, Matt, honey, you need to hydrate," she cooed, her voice dripping with exaggerated concern. She set the water down and adjusted his pillows, fluffing them aggressively. She looked at me with sad eyes. "See," she whispered, "the toxins are coming out. He is exhausted. But the doctor said this is the breakthrough point. By Monday, he will be a new man." I looked at Matt. He was trying to sit up to drink, but his hands were shaking so bad he spilled water on his chin. Rachel wiped it away with a cloth, shushing him like a baby. It looked caring. It looked tender. But to me, watching my son wither away while she talked about toxins, it looked like torture. I needed to know. I needed to be sure. I remembered the lie she told me on the phone. "Dr. Schneider, New York, the specialist." "Matt," I said, leaning in close, "I wanted to ask you something." Rachel stiffened. I could feel her eyes boring into the back of my neck. "Dad, let him rest," she warned. I ignored her. "Matt," I said again, "how do you like this new doctor, Dr. Schneider? Is he treating you okay?" Matt frowned. It was a slow, painful movement of his forehead muscles. He blinked, trying to process the words. "Who?" he whispered. "Dr. Schneider," I repeated, enunciating clearly. "The specialist from New York. The one Rachel told me about. The one doing this detox therapy." Matt looked at me. Then he looked at Rachel. Then back at me. The confusion in his eyes was total. It was genuine. There was no flicker of recognition. "Dad." "What are you talking about?" he asked. His voice was stronger for a second, fueled by confusion. "I do not have a doctor in New York. I saw Dr. Harrison last month. He is the only cardiologist I see." "Who is Schneider?" The air left the room. The silence that followed was deafening. It roared in my ears. My heart hammered against my ribs. There it was. The truth. Naked and ugly. There was no Dr. Schneider. There was no detox. There was no experimental drug from Switzerland. My son was not detoxing. He was dying. He was going into heart failure because he had not taken his medicine in 4 days. He was taking flour pills while his heart slowly gave up. I turned slowly to look at Rachel. She was standing at the foot of the bed. The mask was gone. The worried, loving wife was gone. Her face was hard, angular, cold. Her eyes were narrow slits. She was not looking at Matt. She was looking at me. And in that look there was no fear. There was no apology. There was only a sharp, venomous warning. She stepped forward, her voice tight and controlled. "Matt, honey, you are confused again," she said. "It is the brain fog. Dr. Harrison referred us to Schneider. Remember? You signed the papers weeks ago. You just forgot. It is a side effect of the withdrawal." She looked at me and her eyes dared me to speak, dared me to contradict her, dared me to cause the stress that might kill him right there and then. "Dad, stop confusing him," she hissed. "You are upsetting him. His heart rate is going up. Do you want to hurt him?" I looked back at Matt. He looked terrified. He was looking between us, trying to understand, trying to remember a doctor that did not exist. His breath was coming faster now, shorter. I do not remember, Rach," he gasped. "I don't remember signing anything." "It is okay. Shh, it is okay," she soothed, stroking his damp hair. "Just close your eyes. Dad was just leaving. He did not mean to scare you." She looked at me again, and then she did something that chilled me to the bone. She pointed at the door. It was not a suggestion. It was a command. "Get out." I stood up. My legs felt heavy like they were encased in concrete. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her by her expensive sweater and shake the truth out of her. But I looked at Matt. He was gasping, clutching his chest. If I caused a scene now, if I started a shouting match, the stress really could kill him. His heart was hanging by a thread. I had to be smart. I had to be the foreman. Assess the danger. Make a plan. Execute. I could not fight this battle here, not while he was so weak. "Okay, son," I said, forcing a smile that felt like it was cracking my face. "I must be mixed up. I am getting old, you know? Memory is not what it used to be. You just rest. Listen to Rachel." I walked to the door. Rachel followed me out into the hallway. She closed the bedroom door softly behind her. As soon as the latch clicked, she turned on me. She did not yell. She stepped into my personal space, smelling of vanilla and malice. "You need to leave, Robert," she whispered. "You are confusing him. You are interfering with his treatment. If you come back here and stress him out again, I will ban you from this house. I will not let you see him or Lily. Do you understand?" I looked at this woman. This stranger. I thought about the $200,000. I thought about the lunches. I thought about the $5 million insurance policy that had to be hiding somewhere in this house. "I understand, Rachel," I said. "I understand perfectly." I sat in my truck at the end of the driveway, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard the leather creaked. I had told myself I was leaving, that I was going to hire a private investigator, but something pulled me back. It was the same instinct that told me when a support beam was about to snap, the same gut feeling that had saved my crew from collapsing trenches a dozen times. I looked at the rearview mirror. Rachel was in the side yard, pacing back and forth, her phone pressed to her ear. She looked agitated, her free hand chopping the air. She was distracted. I knew I had maybe 5 minutes. I turned off the engine. I did not have a key to the front door anymore. Rachel had made sure of that when they changed the locks last month, but I knew the keypad code to the garage. It was Matt's birthday. 4182. I punched the numbers in. The heavy door slid up with a groan. I slipped inside and hit the button to close it, immediately plunging myself into the semi-darkness of the garage. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I was breaking into my own son's house. I was a criminal in the home I had paid for. I entered through the mudroom. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I crept down the hallway, my work boots making no sound on the hardwood, because I had learned how to walk on unfinished floors without vibrating the beams. I headed straight for Matt's home office. It was a room I had helped him paint just 6 months ago. The door was ajar. I pushed it open. The room was a mess. Matt was usually meticulous, an accountant who kept everything in its right place. But this room looked like a hurricane had hit it. Papers were strewn across the mahogany desk. Unopened envelopes were piled on the floor. It smelled of stale coffee and neglect. This was the room of a man who had given up. I went to the desk. I did not know what I was looking for, but I knew I would know it when I saw it. I sifted through the pile of mail. Past due notices for credit cards. A warning from the Homeowners Association about the lawn. Medical bills from Dr. Harrison. And then buried under a stack of junk mail, I saw a thick envelope with a red stamp on it. It was from a company called Sovereign Life. I tore it open. My hands were shaking so bad I ripped the paper. I pulled out the document. It was a premium notice for a life insurance policy. I scanned the numbers. The monthly premium was $4,500. I gasped. That was an insane amount of money. Who pays that much for life insurance? Then I saw the coverage amount. $5 million. The number sat there on the page, black and stark. $5 million. I checked the date of the policy. It had been taken out just 3 months ago, right around the time Matt started getting sick, right around the time Rachel started talking about his stress. I felt the bile rise in my throat. I had to grab the edge of the desk to keep from falling. The math was so simple, so brutal, it made my head spin. Matt was sick. He was dying. And if he died, Rachel walked away with $5 million. She could pay off the $1.2 million house. She could pay off whatever debts they had. She would be a rich young widow. And the detox, the flower pills, it all fit perfectly. If Matt died of a heart attack, it would look natural. He had a history of heart failure. No one would question it. The autopsy would show his heart gave out. They would not look for poison because there was no poison. There was just the absence of medicine. She was killing him by taking away the only thing keeping him alive. I heard the back door slide open. Rachel was coming back inside. I shoved the document back into the envelope and buried it under the stack of mail, trying to make it look exactly as I had found it. I backed out of the room, my heart thumping so loud I was sure she could hear it. I slipped into the mudroom just as I heard her heels clicking on the kitchen tile. "I hate this," she was saying into her phone. "I hate waiting. It is taking too long." I did not stay to hear the rest. I slipped out the side door of the garage, pressing the keypad to close it behind me. I ran to my truck, crouching low so she would not see me through the windows. I started the engine and peeled out of the driveway, not caring about the noise this time. I drove until I was 3 miles away, parking in the empty lot of an abandoned strip mall. I leaned my head against the steering wheel and screamed. A raw, guttural sound of pure agony. My daughter-in-law was murdering my son for $5 million. I pulled out my phone and dialed Miguel. He answered on the first ring. "Ben, where are you?" Miguel asked. "I found it," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "I found the motive. Miguel, there is a $5 million life insurance policy on Matt. She took it out 3 months ago." Miguel let out a long, low whistle. $5 million. That is a lot of motive, Ben. That is enough to make a lot of people do very bad things. "She is killing him, Miguel," I said, tears streaming down my face. "She is starving his heart to get the payout. She is going to let him die and then live like a queen on his grave. I have to go to the police. I have to tell them." "No," Miguel said sharply. "Ben, stop. Listen to me. Do not go to the police. Not yet." "Why not?" I shouted. "She is killing him because you have nothing." Miguel snapped. "You have a story about a lunchbox you threw away. You have a panicked phone call. And you have an insurance policy that is perfectly legal. Wives take out policies on husbands every day. If you go to the cops now, Rachel will spin it. She will say you are a senile old man who is confused about his son's medication. She will say the policy was Matt's idea. She will say the flour was just a baking accident. And while the cops are writing reports and doing nothing, she will finish the job. She will make sure he takes the rest of those fake pills, and he will be dead before they even open a file." I slammed my hand against the dashboard. "Then what do? I cannot just watch him die. We need proof." Miguel said, his voice calm and cold. "Real proof, irrefutable proof. We need the real medicine." "What do you mean?" "Think about it, Ben. If she is swapping the pills, she has to have the real ones somewhere. She cannot throw them away because she needs to refill the prescription to keep up the appearance. She needs to show the pharmacy bottles if anyone asks. The real nitroglycerin is somewhere in that house. If we can find it, and if we can find the stash of flower pills she is making, then we have her. Then we have evidence of intent. You want me to break in again? I asked. I want us to save your son, Miguel said. And there is only one way to do that. We need to find where she is hiding the real drugs, and we need to swap them back. We need to put the real medicine in his organizer without her knowing. Swap them back, yes. If Matt starts getting better while he is supposedly on the detox, it proves the detox is a lie. And it saves his life immediately. If he gets better, Rachel will panic. She will make a mistake. And we will be there to catch her. But first you need to get us inside that house long enough to search it. I thought about the house. I thought about the locked doors. I thought about Rachel's vigilant eyes. I need a key, I said. I do not have a key. Then you need to get one, Miguel said. And you need to do it soon. Every hour that passes is another hour your son's heart is struggling to beat. You know her routine. You know her habits. Find a way, Ben. Be the foreman. Solve the problem. I hung up the phone. I looked at my calloused hands. Hands that had built skyscrapers. Hands that had tied rebar and poured concrete. I was not a detective. I was not a spy. But for $5 million, my daughter-in-law had turned into a monster. And to defeat a monster, I had to become something scary myself. I couldn't sleep. The doubt was eating me alive. Miguel's words kept replaying in the dark. Gambling with a loaded gun. I needed to know the truth. I needed to talk to the one person who would know Matt's medical history better than anyone. I sat in my truck the next morning and called Dr. Harrison, Matt's cardiologist for the last 10 years. My hand shook as I held the phone. Dr. Harrison, I said when he came on the line. I am sorry to bother you. I am confused about Matt's new treatment. New treatment? Harrison asked, his voice professional but puzzled. What do you mean, Ben? The detox, I said. Did you refer Matt to a specialist in New York, a Dr. Schneider? Rachel said you signed off on a placebo cycle to prepare him for some Swiss drug. The silence on the other end was absolute. Then Harrison's voice came back sharp and alarmed. Ben, who told you this? Rachel, I whispered. Ben, listen to me carefully. Harrison said, his tone turning icy. There is no Dr. Schneider. There is no detox protocol for heart failure. If Matt stops taking his nitroglycerin, his heart will fail. He could die within days. This is not a treatment. This is negligence. I felt the blood drain from my face. But the pills, she said. Rachel came into my office last Tuesday, Harrison interrupted. She picked up Matt's refill, a 3-month supply of extended-release nitroglycerin. The copay was $400. I handed the bag to her myself. She has the medicine, Ben. The phone almost slipped from my hand. She had the cure. She had the life-saving drugs in her possession, and she was choosing to feed him flour. She wasn't just negligent. She was methodical. Thank you, doctor, I said, my voice dead. That is all I needed to know. I hung up. The grief was gone, replaced by a cold, hard rage. I needed to get into that house. I needed to find those pills. But Rachel had changed the locks. I couldn't just walk in. I needed a key. I drove back to my miserable apartment. I needed a plan. Rachel prided herself on being the perfect daughter-in-law. She loved to play the caretaker. I would use that against her. I would use her own fake kindness as a weapon. I set the stage. I pulled a heating pad out of the closet and threw it on the bed. I scattered some old painkiller bottles on the nightstand. I messed up the sheets to look like I had been thrashing in pain. Then I dialed her number. I closed my eyes and channeled every ounce of pain, every ache in my 70-year-old joints. Rachel, I wheezed into the phone. Dad. What's wrong? I fell. I gasped, letting a little whimper escape. At the site. My back. I can't move. I'm stuck in bed. I haven't eaten all day. Oh no, she cried, her voice thick with performative sympathy. Do you need an ambulance? No money for that, I groaned. Just, could you bring me some soup, please? She took the bait. I'm on my way, Dad. Stay right there. 30 minutes later, she was in my dump of an apartment, bustling around like Florence Nightingale in a beige trench coat. She set her expensive designer bag on the chair right next to my bed. You poor thing, she cooed, touching my forehead with a cool hand. I'll heat this soup up for you. She turned and walked to the tiny kitchenette. I heard the microwave hum to life. This was my chance. I sat up, ignoring the stiffness in my back. I reached for her bag. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I unzipped the main compartment. It was a mess of makeup and tissues. My rough, calloused fingers clawed through the clutter, searching for the cold bite of metal. I heard the microwave ding. Panic surged through me. I dug deeper. My fingers brushed a keyring. I grabbed it. It was heavy. I quickly separated the keys, looking for the one with the blue plastic cap, the spare key she kept for the dog walker. Dad? You okay? Rachel called from the kitchen. I froze. Just shifting? I groaned loudly, ripping the key off the ring. I shoved it under my pillow just as she walked back into the room. She was smiling, holding a steaming bowl of soup. She looked at me, then at her bag. The zipper was slightly wider than she had left it. I held my breath. Here we go, she said, oblivious. Nice and hot. She fed me the soup. The woman who was murdering my son was feeding me dinner. I swallowed every spoonful, choking down the bile. I needed her to believe I was weak. I needed her to believe she was in control. You rest, she said, kissing my forehead as she left. I have to get back to Matt. The detox is really draining him. Give him my love, I said, watching her go. As soon as the door clicked shut, I sat up. The pain was gone. I pulled the cold silver key from under my pillow. It felt heavy in my hand. I dialed Miguel. I got it, I said. Pick me up. We go in tonight. Miguel picked me up in his battered work van at 7 in the evening. The sun was setting, casting long, jagged shadows across the streets of Chicago. We parked 3 houses down from Matt and Rachel's place, killing the engine, and sitting in the growing darkness like 2 criminals casing a joint. I felt sick. I was 70 years old, a man who had built skyscrapers and managed crews of hundreds, and here I was about to burglarize the home I had paid for. We waited. I knew their schedule. Rachel had mentioned on the phone that she was taking Matt to a late appointment at a holistic spa for some kind of relaxation therapy to help with the detox. It was another lie, of course, probably just a drive around the block to keep up the charade, but it bought us an hour, maybe 2. At 7:15, the garage door opened. Rachel's luxury SUV backed out. I saw Matt in the passenger seat. Even from this distance, his head was lolling against the headrest, his mouth slightly open. He looked like a corpse being driven to the morgue. My hands clenched into fists on my knees. Hold on, son, I whispered. Just hold on. As soon as they turned the corner, we moved. We walked quickly up the driveway, keeping our heads down. I pulled the stolen silver key from my pocket. It felt hot in my hand. I slid it into the lock. It turned with a smooth, silent click. We were in. The house was silent, filled with the hum of the central air conditioning and the smell of expensive potpourri. It felt like a tomb, a very expensive marble-floored tomb. Upstairs, I whispered to Miguel, "That is where she will keep it." We climbed the stairs, our boots heavy on the plush carpet. I felt a wave of guilt wash over me, thick and suffocating. This was my son's private sanctuary. A father should not be creeping through his child's home, rifling through their secrets. It felt like a violation of the natural order. But then I remembered Matt's gray skin, and the way he gasped for air, and the guilt hardened into resolve. You take the bathroom, I told Miguel. Check the medicine cabinet. Check under the sink. I will take the bedroom. I walked into the master suite. It was immaculate. The bed was made with military precision. There was not a speck of dust anywhere. It was the room of a woman who controlled everything. I started with the nightstands. Nothing but books and lotions. I checked the closet. Rows of designer dresses and suits, but no hidden stash. I turned to the large dresser against the wall. It was a massive piece of furniture, dark cherry wood. I opened the top drawer on Matt's side. Socks, underwear, watches, nothing. I moved to Rachel's side. I hesitated. Opening a woman's dresser felt different. It felt like crossing a line that should never be crossed. But I gritted my teeth and pulled the handle. The drawer slid open silently. It was filled with silk and lace, lingerie, expensive, delicate things that cost more than my weekly grocery bill. I felt my face heat up with shame, but I forced myself to look. I ran my hands under the layers of fabric, feeling for anything hard, anything plastic. My fingers brushed against something at the very back of the drawer, buried deep beneath a pile of satin slips. It was a hard, cylindrical object wrapped in soft fabric. I pulled it out. It was a blue silk scarf rolled tight. I unwrapped it. And there they were. 3 orange pharmacy bottles. My heart hammered against my ribs. I held them up to the dim light coming from the hallway. The labels were crisp and new. Matthew Carter, nitroglycerin extended release, atenolol. I checked the dates. They had been filled 9 days ago. She had them. She had the cure. She had the life-saving chemicals that could stop my son's heart from failing, and she had buried them in her underwear drawer like a dirty secret. She wrapped them in silk while she fed him flour and watched him die. I felt a rage so pure, so white-hot, that my vision blurred. This wasn't just greed. This was cruelty. This was a game to her. Miguel, I hissed. He appeared in the doorway a second later holding the pill organizer we had seen earlier. He had found it in the bathroom. I found them, I said, my voice trembling. She hid them in her lingerie drawer. Miguel looked at the bottles in my hand. He let out a low curse. That is cold, Ben. That is ice cold. He set the organizer on the dresser. It was filled for the week. Wednesday night through Sunday. All filled with the white, crumbly flour pills. We have to work fast, Miguel said, snapping into medic mode. Open the bottles. I popped the safety cap off the nitroglycerin. Inside were small, hard, white tablets. Real medicine. I poured them into my hand. They looked identical to the fake ones at a glance, but up close you could see the difference. These were uniform, shiny, professional. Miguel dumped the flour pills out of the organizer and swept them into a Ziploc bag he had brought from his pocket. We are keeping these, he said. Evidence. Then with steady hands we began the swap. We placed the real nitroglycerin into the slots. Wednesday night, Thursday morning, Thursday noon. We filled every single compartment with the real life-saving drugs. We did the same with the beta blockers. We replaced every single lie with the truth. When we were done, the organizer looked exactly the same as it had 5 minutes ago. But now, instead of a death sentence, it was a lifeline. Put the bottles back, Miguel said. Exactly where you found them. I wrapped the mostly full bottles back in the blue silk scarf. I shoved them deep into the back of the drawer under the satin slips, arranging the fabric so it looked untouched. I closed the drawer. We checked the room. We smoothed the carpet where we had walked. We made sure we left no trace. We were ghosts. We went back downstairs and slipped out through the garage, locking the door behind us. We were back in Miguel's van before the streetlights even flickered on. As we drove away, the adrenaline crashed, leaving me exhausted and shaking. I looked at the house one last time in the side mirror. It looked peaceful, normal. But I knew a war was being fought inside those walls. Now we wait, Miguel said, lighting a cigarette with a trembling hand. Wait for what I asked. We wait to see if he lives, Miguel said. If he takes those pills tonight and tomorrow morning, his heart will get the support it needs. The fluid in his lungs should start to clear. His color should come back. And when that happens, Ben, when he starts getting better instead of dying, Rachel is going to panic. I nodded. I understood. We had set a trap, not a trap of metal or wire, but a trap of logic. Rachel's plan relied on Matt getting worse. If he got better while he was supposedly on her detox, her entire story would fall apart. She would have to explain why the placebo was curing him. Or worse, she would realize someone had interfered. And when she realizes that I said staring out at the dark city streets, she is going to make a mistake. Exactly, Miguel said. And we will be there to catch her. I went home to my apartment. I sat in the dark, clutching my phone. I pictured Matt walking into that house, tired, dying. I pictured him drinking a glass of water and swallowing the pills we had planted. I prayed. I am not a religious man, not since Carolyn died, but I prayed that night. I prayed that the medicine was strong enough. I prayed that we were not too late. I did not sleep. I just watched the phone, waiting for the signal that the tide had turned. I was terrified, yes. But for the first time in a week, I wasn't helpless. I had struck back. I had put a shield between my son and the woman who wanted to kill him. Now I just had to wait for the monster to show her true face. The 24 hours following the break-in were a blur of paranoia. I was back in my apartment, but my mind was still in that bedroom, wondering if Rachel had opened the drawer, wondering if she had noticed the bottles were shifted a fraction of an inch. I couldn't just sit there. The silence of my room felt like a coffin. On Tuesday night, unable to sleep, I drove back to their neighborhood. I parked 2 blocks away, hidden in the shadow of a large oak tree, just watching. I needed to see if the ambulance came. I needed to know if I had killed my son or saved him. That's when I saw them for the first time. Not in a photo from a private investigator, but in flesh and blood. A black SUV rolled slowly down the street. It didn't have its headlights on, just the amber parking lights glowing like the eyes of a predator. It crawled past the manicured lawns and sleeping houses until it stopped directly in front of Matt's driveway. I slumped low in my seat, holding my breath. My heart hammered against my ribs. The window of the SUV rolled down. A lit cigarette butt flicked out, sparking against the pavement. Then a man leaned out. Even from this distance, I could feel the menace radiating off him. He wasn't looking at the house casually. He was memorizing it. He was measuring the distance from the door to the street. He was calculating angles. He pulled out a phone and snapped a picture of the front window, Lily's bedroom window. A cold rage washed over me, instantly replacing my fear. These weren't just loan sharks. These were butchers. They were marking their territory before the slaughter. Then the front door of the house opened. Rachel stepped out onto the porch. She was wearing a bathrobe, hugging herself tight against the chill. She looked small, frail, nothing like the composed woman who had lied to my face. She stared at the SUV. She didn't scream. She didn't run inside. She just stood there, frozen like a rabbit caught in the high beams of a semi-truck. The man in the SUV laughed. It was a low, cruel sound that carried on the night wind. He made a gun shape with his hand, pointed it at her, and mimed the recoil. Rachel flinched as if she'd been physically struck. She stumbled back, nearly tripping over the welcome mat, and slammed the door shut. The sound of the deadbolt sliding home echoed in the quiet street. The SUV lingered for another 10 seconds, an eternity, before peeling away into the night. I sat there, gripping my steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I realized then that Miguel was right. This wasn't a game. Rachel wasn't killing Matt out of simple greed. She was terrified. She was living in a war zone I had only just discovered. I wanted to drive up there. I wanted to bang on the door and tell her I knew, tell her I could help. But I stopped myself. If I revealed my hand now, before the medicine had time to work, before Matt's mind cleared, I would blow everything. I needed Matt strong enough to face the truth. I needed him alive. I started my truck and drove away, leaving the house to its nightmares. But that image, the man pointing a finger gun at my daughter-in-law, burned into my retinas. It confirmed one thing. The clock wasn't just ticking for Matt's heart. It was ticking for all of us. And I was running out of time. The next 72 hours were a masterclass in torture. I sat in my cramped, mildew-scented apartment, staring at the peeling paint on the ceiling, waiting for my phone to ring. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my son's gray face. I saw the fluid swelling in his ankles. I saw the white flour crumbling in Miguel's hand. I had played God. I had broken into a man's house and messed with his medication. Miguel assured me that the nitroglycerin would work fast, that it would dilate his blood vessels, drop the pressure on his heart, and clear the fluid from his lungs within hours. But Miguel was a medic in a war zone 30 years ago. What if we were too late? What if the damage Rachel had inflicted was already permanent? What if by the time I swapped those pills, Matt's heart was already too far gone to be saved? I jumped every time a siren wailed outside on the Chicago streets. My heart seizing up, terrified it was an ambulance racing toward the suburbs, terrified that Rachel had found the real pills and flushed them, terrified that I would get a call from the coroner instead of my son. Wednesday afternoon arrived like a slow execution. The silence in my apartment was deafening. I was pacing the floor, wearing a path in the cheap linoleum, counting the cracks in the tiles, just to keep my mind from snapping. Then, at 2:14 p.m., my phone buzzed. It vibrated against the nightstand like an angry hornet. I stared at the screen. Matt. My breath caught in my throat. I reached out my hand, trembling. This was it. This was the moment I found out if I was a savior or a failure. I slid my thumb across the screen and brought the phone to my ear. "Hello," I said. I braced myself for a weak whisper. I braced myself for Rachel's fake, sobbing voice telling me he was gone. "Dad." The voice that boomed through the speaker nearly made me drop the phone. It wasn't a wheeze, it wasn't the dry rattle of a dying man. It was loud. It was resonant. It was the voice of the linebacker I had raised, the boy who used to carry 80-pound bags of cement like they were pillows. "Matt," I asked, sinking onto the edge of my lumpy mattress, because my knees suddenly felt like water. "Is that you?" "You are not going to believe this, Dad," he said, and I could hear the grin in his voice. I could hear the oxygen filling his lungs. "I feel incredible. I mean absolutely incredible." What happened?" I asked, playing the part though my heart was soaring. "I woke up this morning and it was like a fog had lifted." He said the words tumbling out of him in a rush of adrenaline. That heaviness in my chest, gone. The swelling in my legs, gone. "I can see my ankles again, Dad. I actually walked Lily to the bus stop this morning, a half-mile, and I didn't even get winded. I didn't even have to stop." I closed my eyes, a wave of relief washing over me so powerful it made me dizzy. It worked. The real medicine. The chemistry I had smuggled into his drawer like a thief was coursing through his veins. It was doing what it was designed to do. My son was alive. "That is wonderful news, son," I said, my voice thick with emotion I tried to hide. "I am so glad." "It is this detox, Dad." Matt continued, his enthusiasm bubbling over. "Rachel was right. I doubted her, I admit it. The first few days were hell. I felt like I was dying. But she kept saying it was just the toxins leaving my system, and she was right. Dr. Schneider is a genius. My body just needed a hard reset. I feel 10 years younger. I even mowed the lawn this afternoon. Can you believe that I pushed the mower for 40 minutes? I felt a spike of cold anger pierce through my relief. He was praising the poison. He was crediting the detox, the very lie that was designed to kill him, for his recovery. He was thanking the woman who had tried to stop his heart for the miracle I had delivered. "That is amazing, Matt," I said, forcing my voice to remain neutral. "And what does Rachel think? Is she happy?" There was a pause on the line. A strange, hesitant silence that spoke volumes. Yeah, she is. She is surprised. Matt said, his tone shifting slightly, losing some of its manic energy. I think she is just in shock. She keeps asking me if I am sure I feel okay. She is really worried I might be having what did she call it? A false rally. Like a surge of energy before a crash. She keeps trying to make me lie down, but I have too much energy. I feel like I could run through a wall. Hey, honey, Matt shouted away from the phone, his voice echoing in their large kitchen. Dad is on the line. I told him the detox worked. I told him I'm back. I strained my ears against the speaker. In the background, I heard a distinct crash. The sound of glass shattering on a hard tile floor. Then I heard Rachel's voice. It wasn't the smooth, confident, syrup-sweet voice of the woman who had kicked me out of the bedroom on Saturday. It was high, thin, vibrating with terror. Matt, stop! She shrieked in the distance. Sit down. You shouldn't be up. Your heart, it isn't ready. You are going to kill yourself. She wasn't worried for his health. She was terrified of his life. She was watching a dead man walk. She was watching her $5 million payout mow the lawn and walk the dog. The plan was falling apart right in front of her eyes, and she didn't know why. She must be panicking, wondering if she had mixed up the pills herself, wondering if the flour was defective, wondering why the universe was denying her the death she needed. Let me talk to her, Matt, I said, a cold, predatory satisfaction settling in my gut. Sure, hold on. I heard the phone fumble. Here, Rach. Dad wants to say hi. Hey, Dad, Rachel said. Her breath was coming in short, sharp gasps like she had just run a mile. Rachel, I said, keeping my voice cheerful and loud, the voice of a clueless, happy grandfather. Matt sounds fantastic. You must be so relieved. That Dr. Schneider really knows his stuff, huh? That blind cycle worked exactly like you said. I could hear her breathing hitch. It was the sound of a trapped animal. Yes, she stuttered. It is a miracle. We are so blessed. But we have to be careful, Dad. It could be a fluctuation. We don't want to get our hopes up. She was scrambling. I could hear the gears grinding in her head, trying to find a new angle, a new lie to put him back in that bed, to stop his heart again. She sounded desperate. Well, you just keep doing what you are doing, I said, my voice dripping with irony she couldn't detect. It is clearly working. Give him his afternoon dose. Don't miss a single one. I will, she whispered. I hung up the phone. I sat there for a moment, savoring the small victory. My son was safe for the moment. The medicine was in his system. Rachel was cornered. But the war wasn't over. I still didn't understand the full picture. I knew how she was doing it, but I needed to understand the why deep down. Greed was a powerful motivator, yes, but $5 million, that felt specific. That felt urgent. My phone buzzed again. It wasn't Matt this time. It was a number I didn't recognize. Ben Carter, a gravelly voice asked. Yes. This is Vance, the private investigator. My stomach tightened. I had hired Vance with the last $5,000 I had to my name. It was a gamble, throwing away my safety net, but I needed to know what was happening in my son's financial life. I found something, Ben, Vance said. His voice was grim, devoid of the professional detachment he usually carried. And you are not going to like it. In fact, you need to see this immediately. Can you meet me? I am at the diner on 4th Street. I'm on my way. I drove to the diner in a daze. Vance was sitting in a back booth nursing a black coffee and chain-smoking, even though the no smoking sign was right above his head. He looked like a man who had seen everything and liked none of it. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. He slid a thick manila folder across the greasy table. I dug into your son's financials, Vance said, tapping the folder with a nicotine-stained finger. And I looked into the wife. Rachel is clean mostly. She spends a lot on clothes, sure keeps up appearances, but nothing criminal. But your son, Matthew, he took a drag and blew the smoke away from me. Your son is drowning, Ben, but not in a mortgage, not in student loans. I opened the folder. It was a sea of red ink, bank statements, credit card bills, and transaction logs. Pages and pages of transaction logs. What am I looking at? I asked, squinting at the rows of numbers. Addiction, Vance said flatly. Online gambling. Crypto casinos based in Malta. Sports betting apps. High-stakes poker sites. He flipped a page pointing to a series of massive withdrawals from 3 years ago. He lost the down payment you gave him in the first 6 months, Vance said. He tried to double it on a crypto scheme and lost 80%. Then he tried to win it back on sports betting. He chased his losses, Ben, and he kept digging. I felt the blood drain from my face. The $200,000. My house, my memories, my retirement. Gone. Vaporized in an online casino while I was sleeping on a lumpy mattress. It gets worse, Vance said, his voice dropping lower. When the banks cut him off when the credit cards were maxed out, he didn't stop. He went to private lenders, the kind that don't check credit scores but do check where your kids go to school. Loan sharks, I whispered. Big ones, Vance confirmed. A syndicate operating out of the East Side. They run the numbers for half the city. I found the digital paper trail on a burner phone account linked to his email. Threats, deadlines, pictures. He slid a glossy photo across the table. It was a surveillance shot. My son Matt standing in a parking lot arguing with 2 large men next to a black SUV. Matt looked terrified. He owes $300,000, Ben, Vance said. Principal plus vigorish. They are squeezing him. They told him if he didn't pay by the end of the month, they were going to start taking payment in blood. I stared at the photo. $300,000. My son wasn't just bad with money. He was a desperate, cornered addict who had dragged his family into a pit of vipers. And the insurance? I asked, my voice hollow. Vance nodded. That is the kicker. He took out that $5 million policy 90 days ago. Sovereign life. I checked the fine print. There is a suicide clause, Ben. It is standard. If he kills himself within the first 2 years, the policy pays nothing. 0. I sat back, the booth squeaking under my weight. The picture was shifting. It was rearranging itself into something even more horrifying than simple greed. So Rachel knows, I said. She knows about the debt. She knows about the threats. She has to, Vance said. He pulled out another photo. This one made my heart stop. It was a picture of my granddaughter Lily playing on the swing set at her elementary school. It was taken from a distance through a chain-link fence. They sent this to Matt's phone yesterday, Vance said. Caption read, "Cute kid, shame if she fell." They are threatening to kill his family, Ben. I felt sick. I wanted to vomit right there on the table. The pieces were clicking together with the sound of a prison door slamming shut. Rachel wasn't just killing him for a payday to buy shoes or a vacation home. She was killing him because there was a gun to her head. Or to her daughter's head. If Matt died of natural causes like a heart attack caused by medical complications, the insurance paid out $5 million. She could pay off the sharks. She could save the house. She could save Lily. It was a twisted, horrific logic. Kill the husband to save the child. Sacrifice one life to save 2. So she is doing it to pay the debt, I murmured. She is sacrificing him to save Lily. Vance shrugged. Or maybe they are in it together. Maybe he knows. Maybe he doesn't. But one thing is clear, Ben. The deadline the Sharks gave him, it's next Tuesday. I looked at the date on the calendar on the wall. Today was Friday. Tuesday was 4 days away. That was why she was panicking. That was why she was terrified when Matt started getting better. She was running out of time. If Matt didn't die by Tuesday, the Sharks would come for Lily. The detox had to work now, or it was all over. I stood up. My legs felt heavy, but my mind was clear. The anger I had felt toward Rachel was still there, but it was complicated now. It was mixed with horror and pity. My son had created this mess. His addiction, his lies. He had invited the devil into his home, and now his wife was trying to pay the devil with his soul. I threw a $20 bill on the table for the coffee I hadn't touched. "Thank you, Vance," I said. "Where are you going?" Vance asked. "I'm going to stop a murder," I said. I walked to my truck. I checked my phone. I had a voicemail from Matt. "Dad, pick up. I'm going to take Lily for ice cream. I feel great. This is the best day I've had in years." I listened to his happy, oblivious voice. He was celebrating his health while the executioner sharpened the axe. He was buying ice cream while his wife was probably frantically trying to figure out how to kill him faster. I realized then that I couldn't wait any longer. I couldn't play games with pill organizers and secret keys. The danger was real, and it was standing on their doorstep. The black SUV wasn't just a threat. It was a promise. I started the engine. I wasn't going back to the apartment. I was going to their house. And this time I wasn't going to knock. I wasn't going to play the frail old man. I was going to kick the door down and force the truth into the light before the sharks came to feed. I pulled out onto the road, my tires screeching. Tuesday. I had until Tuesday. But looking at the desperation in Rachel's eyes earlier, I knew Matt might not make it through the night if I didn't act now. I was halfway to their house when my phone buzzed against the dashboard. It was Vance, the private investigator. His voice was tight, stripped of the earlier cynicism. He sounded like a man watching a train wreck in slow motion. "Ben," he said, "you need to get there now. I have eyes on the place. A black SUV just pulled up 3 houses down. No plates. 2 guys inside, and they are not delivering pizza. They are watching the driveway." My blood ran cold. The sharks were circling. They were not waiting for the end of the month. They were there to intimidate, to threaten, maybe to make good on the photos they had sent. I slammed my foot on the accelerator. My old Ford groaned in protest, the engine whining as I pushed it past 70 on the suburban streets. I did not care about speed tickets. I did not care about safety. My granddaughter was in that house. My son, the idiot gambler, was in that house. And the woman who I thought was a murderer was in that house. I drove with the desperation of a man who has already lost too much. I thought about the $300,000. It was a staggering amount of money, but compared to a life, it was paper. I thought about the $5 million policy. It sat there like a tombstone over my family. I screeched into the driveway, ignoring the black SUV parked down the street. I saw 2 heads turn in that vehicle watching me, but they did not move. They were just the messengers of fear for now. I jumped out of the truck, my boots hitting the pavement hard. I did not go to the front door. I went straight for the garage keypad. 4182, Matt's birthday. I punched it in so hard I almost cracked the plastic. The door began its slow, mechanical ascent. I did not wait for it to open fully. I ducked under it when it was waist-high, scrambling into the garage like a soldier in a trench. I burst into the mudroom. The house was not silent this time. It was filled with noise, screaming. It was coming from the kitchen. It was a raw, hysterical sound that made the hair on my arms stand up. It was my son. I ran down the hallway, my heart hammering against my ribs like a sledgehammer. I reached the kitchen doorway and stopped. The scene before me froze my breath in my lungs. It was a beautiful kitchen. I remembered when they renovated it. $50,000 in granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, and custom cabinetry. It was a kitchen designed for family dinners and holiday baking. But right now, it looked like a war zone. Rachel was slumped on the floor near the refrigerator, her face buried in her hands, her body shaking with violent, racking sobs. She looked broken, defeated. And Matt, my son, who just 3 days ago was on his deathbed, was standing over her. He looked vibrant. His color was good. His legs were strong. The real medicine I had swapped had done its job perfectly. He was physically healed, but mentally he was unraveling. He was holding an orange prescription bottle in his hand. He was shaking it at her, his face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated anguish. "Why am I not dead?" he screamed. His voice cracked, echoing off the expensive tile. "Why am I standing here, Rachel? I took them all. I took every single one of them this morning." I stood in the shadows of the hallway, paralyzed. This was not what I expected. I expected to find Rachel force-feeding him poison. I expected to find a victim and a villain. But Matt was not acting like a victim. He was acting like a man whose plan had failed. Matt threw the bottle across the room. It smashed against the subway tile, backsplash shattering into orange plastic shards. "You promised me," he roared, tears streaming down his face. "You promised you would help me. I woke up today feeling great. I walked Lily to the bus. I mowed the lawn. My heart is beating like a drum, Rachel. It is strong. Why is it strong?" Rachel looked up, her face a mess of mascara and tears. "I do not know, Matt," she wailed. "I swear to you, I do not know. I gave you the flower. I made them myself. Just like you asked. I swapped them out." "You are lying," Matt shouted. He paced the kitchen floor like a caged animal. "You got scared. You chickened out. You gave me the real medicine, didn't you? You want them to kill us, and you want those men outside to come in here and hurt Lily." I leaned against the doorframe, my world tilting on its axis. The conversation was nonsensical. It was insane. My son was screaming at his wife because she had saved his life. He was furious because he was healthy. "No, Matt. No," Rachel sobbed, crawling toward him and grabbing his leg. "I want you to live. I never wanted to do this, but I did what you said. I swear I emptied the capsules. I filled them with flour. I hid the real ones in my drawer. I do not know why you are getting better. Maybe your heart is just too strong." "Too strong," Matt laughed. It was a manic, terrifying sound. "My heart is garbage. It has been garbage for 10 years. It should have stopped 3 days ago." That was the plan, natural causes. A heart attack in my sleep. The insurance pays out. You pay the sharks, and you and Lily are safe. That was the deal, Rachel. He grabbed a heavy crystal vase from the island and hurled it at the wall. It exploded, showering the pristine kitchen with glass. "Now look at me," he yelled, spreading his arms. "I am healthy. I am alive. And because I am alive, we are all dead. The deadline is Tuesday. If I am not in the ground. By Tuesday, they are coming for Lily. Do you understand that?" They sent me a picture of her at recess. I stepped into the light. My heavy work boots crunched on the broken glass. The sound cut through their screaming match like a gunshot. Matt froze. Rachel gasped, pulling herself up against the cabinets. They both looked at me. Their eyes were wide, terrified, like children caught playing with matches while the house burned down. "Dad," Matt whispered. His face went pale, not from sickness, but from shame. I did not say a word. I walked to the center of the kitchen. I reached into the deep pocket of my canvas work jacket. My hand closed around the Ziploc bag Miguel had given me. The bag filled with the white, crumbly flour pills we had removed from the organizer. I tossed the bag onto the granite island. It landed with a soft thud, sliding across the polished surface until it stopped right in front of Matt. "Are you looking for these?" I asked. My voice was low, steady, dangerously calm. The silence in that kitchen was heavier than any steel beam I had ever lifted. The Ziploc bag of flour pills sat on the granite island like a grenade that had already gone off, leaving us in the wreckage. Matt stared at the white powder, his chest heaving, his face a mask of absolute devastation. He didn't look like a man who had been saved. He looked like a man who had just watched his last lifeboat sink. You switched them back," Matt whispered, his voice trembling. "You broke into my house and switched them back." "I saved your life, son," I said, my voice hard. "And you are standing there screaming because you are still breathing. Explain that to me." Explain to me why my son wants to die so badly he is yelling at his wife for not killing him. Matt collapsed. It wasn't a slow slide this time. His legs just gave out. He hit the floor hard, his knees crunching on the broken glass from the vase he had thrown. He didn't seem to feel the pain. He put his head in his hands and let out a sound that I will never forget. It was a howl, a sound of pure animal despair. It wasn't her dad, he sobbed, rocking back and forth. It wasn't Rachel. She didn't want to do it. I made her. I looked at Rachel. She was huddled in the corner, her arms wrapped around herself, shaking violently. She looked at me, her eyes wide and pleading, tears cutting tracks through her makeup. She didn't look like a mastermind. She looked like a woman who had been broken into pieces. What do you mean you made her? I asked, stepping closer to Matt. Matt looked up. His eyes were bloodshot wild. I owe them $300,000, Dad. Not the bank. Not the credit card company. I owe the kind of people who don't file lawsuits. They file missing persons reports. He took a shuddering breath. They came to me last month. 2 guys in a van. They showed me pictures, Dad. Pictures of Rachel coming out of the grocery store. Pictures of Lily on the playground at school. They knew her schedule. They knew her teacher's name. They told me the deadline was the end of the month. If I didn't pay the $300,000 plus interest, they were going to take it out on them. They detailed exactly what they would do to Lily. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. I had dealt with tough guys on construction sites, but this was different. This was evil. So I tried to find a way out. Matt continued, his voice cracking. I tried to get loans. I tried to gamble my way back up, but I just dug the hole deeper. And then I realized, I am worth more dead than alive. He pointed at the kitchen counter where a stack of mail sat. The policy. $5 million. I took it out when I got the promotion last year before everything fell apart. I checked the fine print, Dad. I read every single word. There is a suicide clause. If I put a gun in my mouth or if I drive my car into a wall, they pay nothing. 0. The policy is void for 2 years for self-inflicted death. He looked at me, begging me to understand his twisted logic. But if I die of natural causes, if my bad heart just finally gives out, they pay. They pay $5 million, tax-free. Rachel could pay off the sharks. She could pay off the house. She and Lily would be set for life. They would be safe. I stared at him. My son. The boy I taught to ride a bike. The man I was so proud of. He had reduced his life to an actuarial table. He had decided that his only value to his family was the check they would get when he was in the ground. So you decided to stop the meds, I said, my voice hollow. It was the only way, Matt cried. I knew my heart couldn't take it. Without the nitroglycerin, the pressure would build up. It would look like a standard cardiac arrest. No questions asked. The coroner would see my history and sign the death certificate. It would be clean. And Rachel? I asked, looking at her. How did you get her to agree to this? How did you get your wife to become your executioner? Matt squeezed his eyes shut. I told her everything. I told her about the threats. I showed her the pictures of Lily. She wanted to go to the police, but I told her we couldn't. If we went to the cops, the sharks would know. They would hurt Lily just to prove a point. I told her there was no other way out. He looked at Rachel, his expression full of shame and sorrow. She refused, Dad. For days she refused. She begged me to find another way. She said she would sell the house, sell her jewelry work, 3 jobs, but I knew it wouldn't be enough. Not in time. So I gave her an ultimatum. Ultimatum, I repeated. I told her if she didn't help me do it quietly with the pills, I would go find the sharks myself. I told her I would provoke them. I told her I would make sure they killed me in the street. And I told her that if I did that, there was no guarantee they wouldn't hurt her and Lily anyway. I told her this was the only way to guarantee their safety. I forced her hand, Dad. I monstered her into it. Rachel let out a sob that sounded like something tearing. I did not want to. Ben, she wailed. I swear I measured the flour. I cried every time I filled those capsules. Every time I handed him that lunchbox, I felt like I was dying inside. But he said it was for Lily. He said he was doing it for Lily. I looked from one to the other. The tragedy of it was suffocating. Two people trapped in a nightmare of their own making the worst possible choices out of love and fear. So the detox, I said, looking at Rachel, the specialist in New York. That was all you. We had to tell you something, Rachel whispered. Matt was getting sick. You would have noticed. We needed a cover story. I made it up. I thought if you believed he was getting treatment, you wouldn't look too closely. I just wanted to protect you from the truth. I didn't want you to know your son was sacrificing himself. Sacrificing himself. The words hung in the air. Matt didn't see this as suicide. He saw it as martyrdom. He thought he was being a hero. You fool, I whispered. You absolute fool. I walked over to Matt. He flinched, expecting me to hit him. Maybe I should have. Maybe he needed it. But I couldn't. I looked down at him, at the man who had thrown away his dignity, his life, and his wife's soul, all for money. You think this is brave? I asked, my voice shaking with suppressed rage. You think leaving your wife with the memory of killing you is brave? You think leaving your daughter without a father is brave? You are not a hero, Matt. You are a coward. Matt looked up, stung. Dad. I did it for them, no. I roared. You did it because you were scared. You dug a hole with your gambling and your greed, and instead of climbing out, instead of asking for help, you decided to bury yourself in it. You were going to let your wife watch you die, gasping for air day after day, knowing she could save you, but couldn't because you threatened her. That isn't love, Matt. That is torture. I pointed at Rachel. Look at her. Look what you did to her. You didn't save her. You destroyed her, even if the plan worked. Even if you died and she got the money. How was she supposed to live with that? Every time she spent a dime of that $5 million, she would remember that she murdered her husband to get it. You were going to turn her into a shell, just like you. Matt looked at Rachel. Really looked at her. He saw the terror in her eyes, the broken posture. He saw the toll his sacrifice had taken. He slumped forward, defeated. I didn't know what else to do, he whispered. I was so scared. The image of my son, the strong, capable man I thought I raised, crumbled before my eyes. He wasn't a villain. He wasn't a victim. He was just a weak man who had made a series of catastrophic mistakes and then tried to fix them with the ultimate mistake. I felt a profound sense of loss. I had grieved my wife 6 months ago. Now I was grieving the son I thought I had. That man was gone. In his place was this broken, foolish creature bleeding on the kitchen floor. But he was still my son, and he was still alive. Get up, I said. My voice was tired, bone-weary. Matt didn't move. I said, get up. I grabbed him by the arm and hauled him to his feet. He swayed, unsteady. The deadline, he mumbled. It is Tuesday, Dad. They are going to come. Let them come, I said. We are done hiding, we are done with lies, and we are certainly done with dying. I looked at the orange bottle he had smashed on the wall. The real medicine was scattered among the glass. Pick it up, I told Rachel. Pick up every single pill. She nodded frantically, scrambling to her knees to gather the tablets. We are going to fix this, I said, looking Matt in the eye. But not your way. We are going to do it the hard way. The honest way. Matt shook his head. We don't have $300,000, Dad. We have nothing. I know, I said. But I am still your father, and I am not done yet. I turned away from him, unable to look at his pathetic hope any longer. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. The black SUV was still there, watching, waiting. I pulled out my phone. I had one card left to play, one card I had saved for 40 years. It would cost me everything I had left, every shred of pride, every remaining year of my life. But as I looked at my broken son and his terrified wife, I knew I had to play it. I dialed the number. It rang once, twice. "Frank," I said when the voice answered. "It is Ben. I need a favor." Frank agreed. He did not ask for collateral. He did not ask for a contract. He just asked for my word, and in that moment, my word was worth $300,000. I hung up the phone and looked at the two broken people in front of me. The kitchen was quiet now, save for the humming of the refrigerator and the jagged breathing of my son. The black SUV outside had not moved. The sharks were still waiting, but now I had the bait to make them leave. But there was still one thing I could not wrap my head around. One jagged piece of this nightmare that did not fit. I looked at the crumpled beneficiary form lying on the floor amidst the shattered glass. I bent down and picked it up, my joints popping in the silence. I smoothed it out on the granite countertop. Benjamin Carter. The name stared up at me. Not Rachel. Not Lily. Me. I looked at Matt. He was sitting on a bar stool now, his head in his hands, looking like a man who had just run a marathon with a broken leg. "Matt." I said, my voice low. "I need to understand this. I really need to understand this. You were going to leave Rachel and Lily alone. You were going to leave them with a dead husband and father, and you were going to give the money to me." Matt looked up. His eyes were red, swollen, filled with a pain so deep it looked physical. "It wasn't about leaving them, Dad," he whispered. "It was about cleaning the slate. It was about balance." He took a shaky breath and pointed at the paper under my hand. "I did the math, Dad. I am an accountant. I sat up nights doing the math. I owe the Sharks $300,000. That leaves $4.7 million. He looked at Rachel, who was wiping her eyes with a paper towel. Rachel could sell this house. She could take $1 million from the policy to set herself and Lily up in a smaller place, pay for college, make sure they were never hungry. But the rest, the $3.7 million, that was for you, for me, I asked, feeling a fresh wave of horror washing over me. "Matt, I am 70 years old. What am I going to do with $3 million? I live in a one-bedroom apartment. I eat sandwiches for lunch." "That is exactly it," Matt cried, his voice cracking. "You live in a dump because of me. You are working construction at 70 because of me. I took your house, Dad. I took the home you and Mom built. I took your safety net. I took your golden years and I flushed them down the toilet because I wanted to play big shot in a house I couldn't afford." He stood up, pacing the small space between the island and the sink, his hands flying around him. "Do you know what it feels like? Do you know what it feels like to watch your father limp out of your house every morning to go do manual labor because you are a failure? It eats you alive, Dad. It rots you from the inside out. Every time you smiled at me, every time you told me you were proud of me, it felt like you were stabbing me, because I knew I stole your life." He stopped in front of me, his chest heaving. "I wanted to give it back, Dad. I wanted to give you a retirement. I wanted you to travel. I wanted you to buy a condo in Florida. I wanted you to never have to lift a hammer again. I calculated it. The payout would cover the $200,000 I took, plus interest, plus pain and suffering, plus enough to keep you comfortable for the rest of your life. It was the only asset I had left. My life insurance was the only thing I hadn't ruined." I stared at him. I looked into the eyes of my son, and I saw a love so twisted, so warped by guilt and shame that it had become a weapon. He wasn't just trying to escape his debts. He was trying to buy my forgiveness with his blood. He was trying to reimburse me for his existence. "You think I stammered, struggling to find the words. You think I want money more than I want you. You think a condo in Florida is worth your life. I thought it was the only way to fix it, Matt said, his voice dropping to a whisper. I thought if I was gone, the burden would be gone. You would be rich. Rachel would be safe. The sharks would be paid. Everyone wins. Except me. And I didn't deserve to win. I felt my knees give out. I grabbed the edge of the counter to steady myself. This was the true horror. Not the drugs, not the sharks, but the fact that my son felt so worthless, so crushed by the weight of his own mistakes, that he thought his death was the most valuable thing he could offer us. He had commodified his own suicide. He had turned his death into a transaction to balance the books. It was the most foolish, stupid, heartbreaking thing I had ever heard. I looked at Rachel. She was looking at Matt with a mixture of horror and pity. She had lived with this. She had lived with a man who was actively calculating the ROI of his own death. Matt, I said, my voice shaking, you are an accountant. You are good with numbers, but you are an idiot with people. I walked over to him. I put my hands on his shoulders. I felt the tension in his frame, the vibration of his anxiety. You cannot pay me back with a check, Matt. You cannot refund a father's love. That $200,000, it was paper. It was brick and wood. It wasn't me. You are me. You are my legacy, not the money. I gripped him tighter, forcing him to look at me. If you had died, if you had let that heart stop, you wouldn't have saved me. You would have killed me. Do you understand that you would have put me in the ground right next to you? I would have spent every cent of that insurance money building a shrine to my failure as a father. Matt broke. The last bit of his resistance crumbled. He fell into me, sobbing into my chest, clutching my work vest like a drowning man. I am sorry, Dad, he wailed. I am so sorry. I just wanted to make it right. I held him. I held my 42-year-old boy in the kitchen of the house that had almost destroyed us all. I looked over his head at the window. The black SUV was still there. The threat was still real. But the internal rot, the secret sickness that had been eating my family alive, had been lanced. The poison was out. We stood there for a long time. The silence of the house was broken only by Matt's ragged breathing. Finally, I pulled away. I kept my hands on his shoulders. We have work to do, I said. Frank is wiring the money. It should be in my account within the hour. We are going to pay these men. We are going to get them off your back. Matt nodded, wiping his face with his sleeve. He looked exhausted, drained, but for the first time in weeks, he didn't look like he was dying. He looked like a man who had just woken up from a long nightmare. And then Matt asked, "What happens then? Then you are going to fix this," I said sternly. "Really fix it. Not with death, with life. You are going to sell this house. You are going to pay Frank back. You are going to get help for the gambling. And you are going to spend every day for the rest of your life proving to your wife and daughter that you are worth more than an insurance policy." I looked at Rachel. "And you," I said, "you are going to help him. You are going to stop enabling him. You are going to stop hiding secrets in your underwear drawer. You are going to be a partner, not an accomplice." Rachel nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "Yes, Ben. I promise." My phone pinged. I pulled it out. A text message from my bank. "Transfer received, $300, $1,000, $1,000. I looked at the number. It was a fortune. It was my freedom. It was my future. And I was about to hand it over to a bunch of criminals to clean up my son's mess. But as I looked at Matt, standing there, breathing, his heart beating a strong, steady rhythm in his chest, I knew I had gotten the better end of the deal. Let's go, I said, turning toward the garage. "Let's go pay the bill." We walked out of the house together. 3 generations of Carters if you counted the ghost of the man I used to be. We walked down the driveway to meet the black SUV. I held the phone in my hand like a shield. I was 70 years old. I was broke. I was tired. But I was a father. And today, that was enough. The black SUV was a dark stain against the suburban twilight. Two men sat inside, their faces shadowed but their intent clear. They were not here to talk. They were here to collect one way or another. I marched down the driveway, my boots crunching loudly on the pavement. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs, but my face was stone. I was Ben Carter. I had stared down collapsing tunnels and swaying cranes. I would not blink now. Matt trailed behind me, his steps heavy with terror. I could hear his ragged breathing. He looked like a man walking to his own execution. Rachel stood on the porch, clutching her chest, her eyes wide with panic. The passenger window of the SUV rolled down with a low hum. A man looked out. He had a face like a clenched fist, scarred and hard. "Who are you?" he asked. His voice was like gravel in a mixer. "I am his father," I said, stopping 3 feet from the car. "And I am here to settle the account." The man laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Unless you are Santa Claus, old man, you do not have what we need. Your boy owes us 300 large, and the clock is ticking." Matt stepped forward, his voice trembling. "Please, just leave my family out of it. I need more time." "We do not give time," the man said, opening the door. He stepped out. He was big, towering over me. He took a step toward Matt, his hand reaching into his jacket. I stepped in between them. I planted my feet. I felt the arthritis in my knees flare, but I ignored it. I said, "I am settling it," I growled. "Right now. Wire transfer. Give me the routing number." The man stopped. He looked down at me, sizing me up. He saw the work clothes, the gray hair, the fire in my eyes. He smirked. "Okay, Pops. You want to play hero? Go ahead." He recited the numbers. I pulled out my phone. My fingers were steady as I punched them into my banking app. $300,000. It was everything Frank had just loaned me. It was my freedom. It was my dignity. It was the rest of my life enslaved to a debt I did not create. Matt grabbed my arm. "Dad, don't." He whispered, his eyes wide with horror. "You can't do this. You can't work for the rest of your life. It is too much. I am not worth it." That is when I lost it. The rage, the fear, the exhaustion, it all boiled over. I turned and I slapped him. It was not a gentle tap. It was a hard, stinging slap across the face that echoed in the quiet street. Matt stumbled back, holding his cheek, shocked. "Shut up," I yelled. "Don't you ever say that again. Your life is not cheap. It is not something you trade for a condo in Florida. It is not something you throw away because you are scared." I grabbed him by the shirt, pulling him close. "I built skyscrapers, Matt. I poured concrete until my hands bled. I did that so you could live, so you could have a life, and I will work until I die if that is what it takes to keep you breathing. Do not insult my sacrifice by telling me you aren't worth it." Matt stared at me, tears welling up again. He finally understood. This wasn't about money. It was about value. And to me, he was priceless. I turned back to the man. I hit confirm. "It is sent," I said. The man checked his phone. A few seconds of agonizing silence passed. The wind rustled the leaves. My heart pounded. Then the man nodded. The smirk vanished, replaced by a flicker of respect. "It is there," he said. "Clear." He got back in the SUV. "Tell your boy he is lucky," he said through the window. "Most guys don't have a daddy like you." The SUV backed out and drove away, disappearing down the street. The threat was gone. The sharks had been fed. I let out a long breath, my shoulders sagging. The adrenaline left me, and suddenly, I felt every day of my 70 years. I was tired. So tired, Dad Matt whispered. Where did you get that money? Who gave you $300,000? I looked at him. I looked at the house. I looked at the sky. Frank, I said. I called Frank. Matt's jaw dropped. Your old boss, but how I sold him the rest of my life, I said simply. I promised him I would run his sites. I would train his crews. I would handle his safety inspections. I told him I would work for free until the debt is paid. But Dad, Matt cried, you are 70. You can't work like that anymore. It will kill you. Maybe, I said, but I will die standing up. I will die working, and I will die knowing my son is alive to raise his daughter. I walked over to the porch where Rachel was standing. She looked at me with awe. She had been ready to kill her husband to save her daughter. She had seen no other way. And I had just shown her that there is always another way if you are willing to pay the price. It is done, I told her. They are gone. Rachel burst into tears again, reaching out to hug me. I let her. I held them both, my son and his wife, right there in the driveway. We were a mess. We were broke. We were broken. But we were alive. I am sorry, Matt kept saying. I am so sorry. Sorry doesn't pay the rent, I said, pulling away. We have work to do, real work. I looked at Matt. First thing tomorrow, we are listing this house. You are going to sell it. You are going to take whatever equity is left, and you are going to pay off your credit cards. You are going to move into an apartment, a small one you can afford. Matt nodded vigorously. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Anything. And you, I said to Rachel, you are going to get a job. I don't care if it is bagging groceries or filing papers. You are going to contribute. No more secrets. No more hiding in the bedroom. I will. Rachel promised. I will start looking tomorrow. And Matt, I said, my voice dropping low. Gamblers Anonymous. Starting tonight. If I find out you bet on so much as a coin toss, I will personally drive you to the police station. I promise, Dad, Matt said. I am done. I swear. I looked at them. They were scared. They were ashamed. But they were listening. For the first time in years, they were actually listening. I walked back to my truck. I needed to sit down. My legs were shaking. I had just signed away my freedom. I had just committed to years of grueling labor when I should be resting. But as I looked back at my son, who was holding his wife alive and safe, I knew I had made the trade of the century. I had bought my son's life for the price of my own comfort. It was a bargain. I climbed into the truck. I looked at my hands on the wheel. They were old hands, weathered, scarred. But they were strong hands. Hands that could still work. Hands that could still build. I started the engine. I had a shift tomorrow, a long one. Frank would expect me at the site at 6 a.m. sharp, and I would be there. I would be the first one there, because that is what a father does. I drove away from the mansion that had almost become a mausoleum. I headed back to my leaky apartment. I was poorer than I had ever been. I was deeper in debt than I had ever been. But as I drove through the city streets, I felt lighter than air. I had won. I had beaten the sharks. I had beaten the lies. I had beaten death itself. And I had done it with nothing but a lunchbox and the truth. The road ahead was going to be hard. It was going to be long. But for the first time in 6 months, I wasn't driving alone. I had my son back. And that was worth every drop of sweat I had left in me. The for sale sign went up on the lawn of the colonial mansion the very next morning. It stood there like a white flag of surrender, signaling the end of an era of pretense. We listed it for $1.1 million, priced for a quick sale. We did not have the luxury of waiting for the market to peak. We needed cash, and we needed it yesterday. When the buyers signed the contract 3 weeks later, I didn't feel a shred of regret. I watched them sign the papers that stripped my son of his status symbol, and all I felt was the lifting of a burden that had nearly crushed us all. The proceeds from the sale were just enough. After paying off the mortgage and the closing costs, there was about $80,000 in equity left. It wasn't a fortune, but it was a lifeline. Matt used every penny of it to pay off the credit cards that had been maxed out to keep up appearances. He cleared the smaller debts, the ones that didn't involve guys in black SUVs, but still kept him awake at night. They moved out the following weekend. No more marble floors. No more 3-car garage. They rented a 2-bedroom apartment in a complex about 5 miles away. It costs $1,200 a month. It has beige carpets and thin walls, and the view is of a parking lot, not a manicured garden. But it is honest. For the first time in his adult life, my son is living within his means. The changes didn't stop with the address. Matt started Gamblers Anonymous the night I paid off the Sharks. He goes 3 times a week. I drive him there myself on Tuesdays just to make sure he walks through the door. He sits in a circle of broken men and admits he has a problem. It is not easy for him. I see the shame in his eyes every time he raises his hand to speak. But shame is better than death. He is still working as an accountant, but he picked up a second job doing tax prep on the weekends to help pay me back. He looks tired. He looks worn down. But he also looks solid, like a man who finally has his feet on the ground instead of his head in the clouds. And Rachel. The woman I thought was a monster turned out to be the one who surprised me the most. She didn't run. She didn't divorce him when the money dried up. She got a job. She works at a bakery now, starting at 4 in the morning, kneading dough and frosting cakes. Her hands, once perfectly manicured, are now dusted with flour, real flour this time, not the poison she used to pack. She comes home smelling like yeast and sugar, her feet aching, but she pays the grocery bill with her own money. She sold her designer bags. She sold the jewelry. She stripped away the facade of the perfect housewife and found a real woman underneath. As for me, life has settled into a rhythm that is both brutal and beautiful. I am 71 years old now. My alarm goes off at 4:30 every morning. My joints are stiffer than they used to be. It takes me a good 10 minutes just to get my boots laced up because my fingers are swollen from arthritis. I drive to the site in the dark, sipping lukewarm coffee from a thermos. Frank kept his word. He put me back on the payroll as a senior site safety manager. But I am not doing it for the paycheck. Every Friday, when the direct deposit hits my account, I transfer 70% of it straight back to Frank. It is a slow chip away at the $300,000 mountain I owe him. At this rate, I will be working until I am 85. I will probably die on a job site wearing a hard hat and a neon vest. And you know what, I am okay with that. It is a Tuesday afternoon in November. The wind is whipping off Lake Michigan, cutting through my canvas jacket. I am standing on the 4th floor of a new high-rise checking the safety rails. The city of Chicago sprawls out below me, gray and steel and cold. My back is screaming. My knees feel like they are filled with broken glass. I am tired. I am so incredibly tired. Ben. I turn around. Standing near the construction elevator are 2 figures. One tall, one small. It is Matt and Lily. They look out of place here amidst the concrete dust and the noise of rivet guns. Matt is wearing his cheap suit from his office job, his tie loosened. Lily is in her pink winter coat, holding her father's hand. "Hey, Dad," Matt calls out, waving. "We brought you something." I walk over to them, my boots heavy. Lily breaks free and runs to me. "Grandpa," she yells, wrapping her little arms around my dusty legs. I hug her tight, smelling the strawberry shampoo in her hair. It is the best smell in the world. Better than money. Better than retirement. "Rachel is working a double shift," Matt says, walking up to us. "So I picked up the munchkin, and we thought we would bring you lunch." He holds out a metal lunchbox. It is red. My old red lunchbox. I take it. It feels heavy, solid. I checked it twice, Matt says, a small, sad smile playing on his lips. No mix-ups, just a roast beef sandwich, an apple, and a thermos of soup. Rachel made it this morning before she left. I look at him. He looks healthy. His color is good. His eyes are clear. The shadows that used to haunt his face are gone, replaced by the fatigue of an honest man working hard to fix his mistakes. He is not the rich, successful son I bragged about 2 years ago. He is a broke, recovering addict living in a rental. But he is alive. He is standing here. Thanks, son, I say, my voice thick. I sit down on a stack of lumber. Matt sits next to me. Lily climbs onto my lap, stealing the apple from the lunchbox. We eat together, surrounded by the skeleton of a building that is just starting to rise. I look at my hands. They are old. They are scarred. They will never hold a golf club in Florida. They will never steer a boat on a lake in retirement. They will hold hammers and drills and safety clipboards until they can't hold anything anymore. I have lost my golden years. I have lost my financial freedom. But then I look at Matt laughing as he wipes a smudge of dirt off Lily's nose. I look at the way he breathes deep and easy, his heart beating a steady rhythm in his chest. The heart that should have stopped. The heart I restarted with a stolen key and a desperate gamble. I realized something then. We spend our lives trying to build things, houses, bank accounts, legacies. We think that is what makes us fathers. We think providing is about the check we write. But it isn't. Providing is about being the wall that stands between your children and the storm. It is about being the safety net when they fall, even if catching them breaks your own back. I took a bite of the sandwich. It tasted like roast beef and horseradish. It tasted like life. I am Ben Carter. I am 71 years old. I have $300,000 of debt and a bad back. I am the poorest man on this construction site. But as I sat there watching my son and granddaughter, I knew I was the richest man in Chicago. I had thought my daughter-in-law was trying to kill my son. The truth was worse. My son was trying to kill himself to save me. He thought his death was the only gift he had left to give. But he was wrong. His life was the gift. Sometimes being a father doesn't mean you get to rest. Sometimes it means you have to pick up your tools again when you are tired and old. It means you have to carry the weight of their mistakes on your shoulders because yours are the only ones strong enough to bear it. And as I watched the sun glint off the steel beams, I knew I would do it all again. I would sell the house again. I would break into the bedroom again. I would sell my life to Frank again. I would do it all again in a heartbeat. Because that is what we do. We build, we repair, we save. And in the end, that is the only legacy that matters. Life has taught me that a father's greatest legacy isn't the balance in his bank account, but the wall he builds to shield his children from the storm. I lost my retirement and must work hard at 70, but I have no regrets. Money can be earned again, but my son's life cannot. Sometimes love isn't giving your children what they want. It's doing what is necessary to save them, even if it means sacrificing the last bit of peace you have. That is the true, unshakable meaning of family. If this story of sacrifice and a father's undying love touched your heart, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel right now. Don't forget to share your thoughts below. Would you be willing to sacrifice your entire future to save your child from their own mistakes? See you in the next story.